You guys feel that? No, that's not heat. That's not pollen. It's college football. College football is in the air this week. We are back, and I've got a brand new show for you guys. Welcome to Reaching for the Pylon. This is a college football show. All year, I will be giving you college football news, updates, all things about this great sport. I'm your host, Daniel, and I've got an exciting show for you today. Today, we are going to be going into my dream game day tour. If I had the opportunities and had all the money I wanted, what games would I go to? I've got a top 25 for you. I've got conference showdowns, and I even have a G6 top 5 so we can monitor who is going to make the college football playoff from the G6. But before we begin, this is a college football show, like I said, and I want to introduce it a little bit further. I love college football. I was born into the sport. I think it's great, the greatest sport there is, far better than the NFL. I am personally an Oklahoma fan, and I will do my best to not allow that to make me biased, and I will be very clear with my biases, but I will also do my best to give you an accurate breakdown when it comes to their stuff and their opponents. But I love college football. I'm excited to get to do this. The goal is I will release a show Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. Today is Monday, so this will be the first show, and be expecting a show Thursday. So that'll be exciting when that happens, and to get some momentum of this thing going. Now, let's just dive right into it. If I had unlimited money and unlimited time and resources, and I got to pick a game day tour to go on, this is it. I will give you my list, and I think it covers a bunch of different teams and leagues and locations, and I think this would be a really fun tour. You may disagree, and if you do disagree, leave it in the comments of where you disagree and what your tour would be, because we all have different personal things that we would want to see. But I'm going to begin, and my game day tour actually begins in week 0. I want to cover week 0. I think there's a fun matchup there. I think there's several fun matchups that I will break down on Thursday. But for our week 0 game, I've got Memphis versus UNLV. That's right. Our first tour is a group of 6 game, and I am pumped. We've got the 7th and 4th best odds to make the playoffs from the G6. I think that will be a very entertaining game. I think it'll kind of set the table for who's a contender in the group of 5 or group of 6 race. And so whoever wins this game is a serious competitor, and like this is something that they can look at, and we can kind of compare where they're at in their season and the opponents that they play. This would be a very important game for either one of them to win and to add to their resume. Also, week 0, just in some consideration, there was TCU, North Carolina, and Ireland. I don't think that's going to be a crazy close game. And North Carolina State and Virginia. I think that is going to be an exciting game, but I'm just more interested in UNLV and Memphis. Now, let's move on to week 1. And I think if you asked 90% of people, they all have one answer. There's been really one answer, and that's Clemson versus LSU. And that is not where I would be going. Instead, my game day game is actually going to happen on a Sunday, and that is Louisville and Ole Miss. I think this is a very important game for both teams. I think it's a way to see how different conferences, an ACC compares to the SEC, and I think that's going to be probably a little bit better tell than Clemson and LSU. We've seen Clemson struggle scaling their production in recent years, so if they're not nearly as good, LSU's a little bit better. I think Ole Miss and Louisville are 2 more complete teams that you will be able to compare these conferences. And so that's why I would rather go to Louisville versus Ole Miss. In week 2, I will go with the favorite, and that is Ohio State going to Texas. I think this is great on great, top of the conference versus top of the conference, and that's been the knock on the SEC versus the Big Ten. The Big Ten's got the better teams, and so this is a chance for Texas to turn that narrative. And if Texas wins, that's a good start to the season and a very difficult schedule. If Ohio State wins, then you have gone into the home of one of the best teams in the SEC and won. That would not be a great look for the SEC versus Big Ten argument. So that's a very, very important game. And just other games that week that I would be interested in is you have Oregon versus Oklahoma State. I think that's going to be a great atmosphere. I'm excited for that one. Oklahoma versus Michigan, similar stakes to Texas versus Ohio State. I think everyone or most people agree that Ohio State and Texas are on that upper echelon of the conferences, and Michigan and Oklahoma are kind of a wait and see. If all comes together, they could be in that upper, but things have to fall together for that to work. And then another game that I think is going to be very interesting is Tennessee versus Georgia Tech, to see kind of two middle of the conference teams, middle to upper. How do they compare? Can Georgia Tech compete with the new quarterback? Can Tennessee compete with the new quarterback? It would be a good win either way. It'd be a better win for Georgia Tech, obviously, and Tennessee, that'd be a worse loss. So there's probably more at stake for Tennessee, but I think that's a good also tell of where these teams and conferences are at. Week 3, another kind of gimme, and that's LSU going to Ole Miss. Not really one that I would want to pass up. I will be watching this one very closely. Lane Kiffin returns to Ole Miss, and I'm pumped for this game. This is going to be a crazy atmosphere. I hope it's a good game. And I think the expectation was Ole Miss was going to fall off after Lane Kiffin, and yet more stuff comes out, more polls get released, and Ole Miss is pretty consistently above LSU. So I'm curious where LSU is going to be at after playing a big game against Clemson, getting a few weeks under the belt as a new team. And then there's Ole Miss led by Chambliss, who is a little more in the situation. Like, he knows where he's at. He knows what he's doing. And so I think that's going to be a very fascinating game. I think LSU might have like the talent edge, but Ole Miss might have that more complete team at this point in the season. So it'll be a very interesting game to watch. I'm pumped for it. I'm so ready. Other games, Houston versus Texas Tech. This one almost got me. I think if it was literally anybody else versus LSU or anybody else versus Ole Miss, I would be going to Houston versus Texas Tech on that Friday night. I think this is a great Big 12 matchup. I am pumped to watch this game. And the other one is SMU versus Louisville. Kind of battle for what we expect to be second in the ACC behind Miami. So an early matchup between these two teams is going to be a huge deal for whoever can get this one under their belt. Week 4, I've got Oklahoma heading to Georgia. This is a personal one for me, but it's also going to be a very big game. If Oklahoma can win the game against Michigan, heading into Georgia 3-0, I'd imagine Georgia would also be 3-0. Huge atmosphere, huge game that you want to have, especially going into the top dogs place. That is going to be a wild environment, and I think it's going to be a really good game. Another game that I consider is Oregon versus USC, heading there. That's been a game that's talked about pretty consistently, but I think the personal edge kind of drew me to Oklahoma versus Georgia. There's also Texas A&M, LSU that week, and Texas versus Tennessee. All great games, I think. But that's where we're going in week 4. In week 5, if you wanted me to go to watch a USC game, well, you've got it. I've got week 5, Washington going to USC. I think this is a great matchup of two equally tiered teams that are trying to get into that upper echelon of the Big Ten. And so this is going to be a very important game. If USC has beaten Oregon, then they're riding that momentum. But if they've just lost to Oregon, where are they at? They need to win this game. I think there's going to be a ton of stakes on this game, and this would be one that I would absolutely love to go to. That week, you also have Ohio State versus Iowa and Miami versus Clemson. Now, in week 6, I would want to head to Dallas for Texas and Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout. I think this is obvious, especially for me as an Oklahoma fan. I want to see Oklahoma win. I think it will be a great game. I think you have two even more improved teams. Both teams seem to be on this upward trajectory, and I think they're going to be in an even better place than what they were last year. Hopefully Oklahoma can keep that healthy quarterback. If Arch continues to progress like he has been, when they played last year, Arch hadn't hit that point of being that really good quarterback. He had that struggle to begin the year, and there was still a little bit of struggle against Oklahoma. So you have a more seasoned Arch, a healthy Mateer. I think this could be an absolutely phenomenal game, and that's why I would want to go to it. Also, you have Iowa, Washington. You have Georgia versus Alabama, which I wouldn't knock anyone for wanting to go to. Texas A&M, Missouri, and USC versus Penn State. That is a loaded day. That, I mean, you're going to need two TVs rolling, or at least a split screen, because there are tons of games that you would want to watch, want to tune into. And if we can only choose one, that would be the one that I would want to go to. Week 7. So far, this game day tour has been pretty SEC heavy. And I admit that. Not much longer, if any longer, because we've got Ohio State going to Indiana, and that is crazy that would be considered a game day game, because just 3 years ago, that would get laughed at for being the game of the day. Ohio State trying to get revenge on Indiana and take that top slot back, top slot of the conference. So it's kind of a no-brainer, but there are other games that would just be fun to go to. I think Notre Dame versus BYU is going to be a great environment. I have no idea about the quality of the game. I think Notre Dame is an elite team. I think BYU is a really good team. How does that compare? How does the environment help? I think that's going to be just a great atmosphere that I would also want to be at. You also have Missouri versus Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, Penn State versus Michigan, and Virginia and SMU. That would all be fun games to go to. Week 8, we have 2 and 3 in the Big 12 facing off. I hope this is a night game. You've got Houston going to Utah. Two teams, or sorry, this would be 3 and 4, not 2 and 3. Two teams that are kind of on the cusp. There's unknowns there. Houston had a good step last year. People think that they can take that next step forward. You've got Utah, who has a new coach, but he's been there a while, so there shouldn't be a whole lot of turnover and new expectations or anything like that. So these 3 and 4 teams that are kind of just waiting below Texas Tech and BYU, if one of them falter, they take a bigger jump. That would completely shift the conference, and one of these two teams could get into that title game. So this is going to be a huge game, and I want to be there. Also, that week, you got Ole Miss, Texas, Indiana versus Michigan, and Texas A&M versus Alabama. Week 9, I want to go watch Ohio State play USC. This is kind of a down week in weeks. We've had a bunch of great ones in a row. We've got maybe the best one coming. But I think you have a tested Ohio State team at this point, which is not the most common thing to hear at this point in the season, but you have a tested team and a USC team that, if they have won their previous games, that is an elite to a really good team. And if they've lost 1 or 2, they are in absolute dogfight mode, trying to take down Ohio State for an upset to keep their season going. And I think that's going to be a great game. Also that week, you have Florida versus Georgia, which is a great rivalry, entertaining game, and maybe an improved Florida team this year with John Summerall as the coach. Then there's week 10. And this is arguably the greatest game, the greatest Saturday we've got this fall. Week 10, I want to go to Miami versus Notre Dame. Very, very predictable in that. But I just want you to hear these other games. Oregon versus Ohio State, Georgia versus Ole Miss, Texas versus Missouri, Alabama versus LSU, BYU versus Utah, the Holy War, Penn State versus Washington. Oregon versus Ohio State right now is the 2-1 team playing each other. And I don't even want to go to that game. I want to go to Miami versus Notre Dame. It's Notre Dame's biggest test. It's showing Miami is that elite, maybe on their way to their first ACC title. This is going to be a huge game. I think it is going to be insane to watch. I wish I could be there. That would be incredible. I can't wait for that Saturday. Week 11, and even the following weeks of the year don't take that much of a downturn. But I think week 11 is like right behind week 10. I don't think there's that much of a drop off. Week 11, I want to go to Texas Tech versus Oklahoma State. Now, Texas Tech is considered to be the best team in the Big 12, and they've given reason to. Obviously, you had the stuff with Sorsby. You've got Hammond taking the reins. What kind of team are they going to be this year? I think most people still think they're going to be pretty good. I'm in that boat. It makes sense to me that they're still the favorite to win the Big 12. But now you have Oklahoma State. There's a lot of unknown of how it's going to correlate with basically this UNT team coming up to Stillwater. You got Mestmaker at quarterback. If this Oklahoma State team is good, and maybe not even in the conversation to make the Big 12 championship game, but just a good team. This fan base is starved for success right now. That atmosphere, that game is going to be phenomenal, and I would want to be there. I think that is going to be an absolutely great game. Also that week, you've got Michigan versus Oregon, Missouri versus Georgia, Texas versus LSU, USC, Indiana, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss, Oklahoma. All phenomenal games, but I think that one clears as far as excitement. If Oklahoma State can get to that level that they think that they can be at, that'd be phenomenal. Week 12, SMU versus Notre Dame. I want to go back to Notre Dame and see another ACC team take them on to, again, see where Notre Dame is at. This is like their second biggest test, and that's about it as far as teams that they play that can compete with them, or that's the expectation. Obviously, things can shake out differently, but I want to go there. SMU, see what kind of season they're having. Could very, very easily be in the ACC championship, competing for that title. Has already been there, and so maybe this is the year that they actually do it. Also that week, you got Indiana, Washington, Virginia Tech versus Miami, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and LSU, Tennessee. And then the last week of the year, week 13 of the Game Day Tour that I would want to go to, I have not Texas versus Texas A&M, not Michigan, Ohio State. The game. No, I'm passing on it. I want to go to Washington versus Oregon. Maybe more of a personal landmark spot of wanting to just go to the Pacific Northwest. But I want to go. I want to experience the hatred in that rivalry. And especially now, since I watched it on TV when Washington beat Oregon and went on to the championship game, Washington's kind of fallen off. I think they could be back. And if they are back, I would want to go to this game 100%. And that's my tour. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of my tour? I'm sure there's areas where you disagree. And please comment below your tour, your ideas, because it's subjective, it's fun. It's not going to get to happen for me, but you better believe I will be watching these games and even all the secondary and tertiary and all the other games that I mentioned at home on my TV, and I cannot wait for that. The next segment, there is a lot of debate on who the best conference is. It's between two, the Big Ten and the SEC. And there's two kind of thought processes going on. Big Ten has the best teams right now. SEC has the more consistent conference top to bottom. And I think both have legitimate arguments to who is the best conference. But there are actual games to be played on the field where we're not even talking about hypotheticals anymore. And we don't have to wait to the end of the season to begin comparing these conferences and how they stack up. So I wanted to walk through, I've got 6 games of conference showdowns to kind of give us an idea of where these conferences are at. First one, Louisville versus Ole Miss. What kind of conference is the ACC? Is it Miami and no one else? Or is there depth there that we're not quite expecting? Because if Louisville can compete with Ole Miss is considered to be one of the higher SEC teams that has a really good chance to make the playoffs. This would be an interesting game. I think I lean Ole Miss, but what can Louisville show in this Week 1 matchup? I think that's going to be an important game and a game that the ACC really wants to compete in to kind of show the rest of the year what kind of conference they are. Also, if Louisville can upset Ole Miss and Miami beat Louisville, like it bolsters Miami's resume too. So the ACC as a whole can really get a boost here in this one. Oregon versus Oklahoma State in Week 2. The rest of these games are going to be in Week 2. It's interesting. I don't think Oregon is going to necessarily struggle in this game, but it's just another test. What kind of team is Oklahoma State? What kind of physicality does the Big 12 produce, or is it kind of just going to be a matchup like it always is? You know, you have a good offense, good skill players at Oklahoma State, but the line is going to whip up. Oregon's going to whip up on Oklahoma State's line, kind of like what happened against Texas Tech in the playoffs last year. There's just something to watch. Like, what are we looking at here? What kind of teams, what kind of conferences are we looking at? And then these two back-to-back, same week, very similar. There's not a more cut and dry example of what we're looking at. And that's Ohio State versus Texas. That's best on best. And then you have Oklahoma going to Michigan. And that's kind of your tier 2 of, you have your tier 1s going at it, your tier 2s going at it. And, you know, do they split? I think it would be more in line with our way of thinking if Ohio State beats Texas and then Oklahoma beats Michigan. But what if we have a sweep? So what if the Big Ten, Ohio State beats Texas and Michigan beats Oklahoma? Well, then we have the best on best goes Big Ten. But what if that second tier starts beating the SEC? Then the Big Ten is really separating themselves. But what if you have Texas finally getting over the hump and an SEC team finally beating one of the best Big Ten teams and Oklahoma beats Michigan? Then you have the SEC kind of correcting course and going back, trying to get that best conference title where there is no debate behind it. And so I think those are two games that people are going to be tuned into. I think you're going to have a lot of conference fans, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to be fans of a conference, but conference fans really rooting for their preferred conference. And there will be a lot of trolling on the internet and social media of these fan bases on which conference is better, just based off of Week 2. But it's the best example of what we have. This game, so we talked best on best and then good on good. Let's talk bad on bad. And maybe not bad, but just kind of okay, just kind of average. And that's Mississippi State versus Minnesota. I think this is a really interesting game. It's not a game that a whole lot of people are going to tune into, but both are at the bottom level of their conferences just from a predictive standpoint. Minnesota maybe slightly higher than Mississippi State. But what if Mississippi State just goes in there and beats them with no trouble? Again, that's kind of in line with what we're thinking. But if Minnesota puts up a fight and beats Mississippi State, that's a deeper conference that you're looking at. I think that game can also tell a lot, even if it's not your best on best or your good on good. And then the last game that is going to be important. In this game, not important to the SEC whatsoever, but super important to the Big 12, and that is Arkansas versus Utah. That is the bottom SEC team in all predictions. The bottom SEC team versus one of the best Big 12 teams. The Big 12 has to have this win. It's at night. They need to take this. Utah needs to beat Arkansas to, if they want any hope of showing their grit as a conference. And, I think they want two Big 12 teams in their way, like a combined three from the ACC and the Big 12. That doesn't happen unless, Louisville can take care of business or Utah can take care of business. And Utah should. Louisville would be a big one to get. But those are the top conference showdowns that I think are going to tell us a little bit about how these conferences stack up. Now, we talked big conferences. Let's go to the group of six, which I love. I love the group of six. Some people are SEC biased, Big Ten. Not me. I want to talk group of six. And I have a top five here. I want this whole season to keep track of what the top group of six teams are so we can see which of them are going to make the playoffs. And so at number one, I think this is a pretty consistent number one, is Boise State. Boise State has the best odds to make the playoffs from the group of six, and I think that makes sense. So there's not really a whole lot of surprise there. They're going to have a big game against Oregon of showing what can they do. Can they put up any fight? Can they show any sort of grit like they did a couple years ago? Like, they don't have to win this game to show their skill. If they can just compete, then that will go a long way in their resume. At number two, I've got UNLV, and I think that also explains why I want to watch that Week 0 matchup with Memphis so bad. I've got UNLV. As an Oklahoma fan, it's probably surprising to hear me be a believer in Jackson Arnold. But I still do. I still believe. I think UNLV can kind of correct his course. And I think there's a chance for some success there. I hope there is. And that's why I've got them number two as far as just having a good track record as a team. Number three, I've got Tulane having to replace a lot. Some are all leaving, but I think they still have a pretty decent team. I think they're a team to watch moving forward. Four, I've got San Diego State. Kind of always a solid group of 16. Hasn't taken that next step as far as like that national stage, but definitely among group of six ranks. They are a tough out, tough to beat. And number five, I've got James Madison. They just keep plugging and playing coaches, sending coaches out, yet they keep winning. And so I think they deserve to be in the top five of the group of six to start the year. Now, there's going to be a lot of shakeup here in the early weeks, and I'm excited to see. There's other teams that there's some excitement about, like UTSA. I think that's going to be a good one. I've heard some about Texas State. I've heard Navy being talked about, Louisiana. Like, there's conferences that haven't been represented in the playoff that I think could be this year. And so I'm excited to just kind of keep an eye on the group of six. And now, maybe the most controversial segment of the day. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily have a knack for this, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to give my hand at a top 25. And I think the beginning is going to be pretty easily agreed upon as far as what six teams are at the top. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of controversy. I think there's going to be disagreement on what the order is. And so please comment your top 25 where you disagree, and let's talk about it. But number one, I've got Ohio State. I think I'm excited to see a second-year Saiyan after starting. It's a complete team. Ryan Day has my confidence. I've got them at number one. At number two, I've got Oregon. So I agree with the AP of making Ohio State versus Oregon your top 1 and 2. 3, I have Notre Dame. I'm a believer in this team. I think they have the talent. I think they have the coaching to get it done. I think this is a serious team. A lot of people criticize their lack of scheduling. I think they're still a good team. I wish they would schedule harder, but that doesn't change the talent level of the team. At 4, I have Texas. I think if there is a year, if there has been a year in the past, this is the year to do it. This is the year to finally take that next level and be in that upper echelon of elite teams. I think they've got the roster to do it. Will it come together? I don't know. At number 5, Georgia. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. They have a very, very high floor. We'll see what kind of ceiling they have this year. At number 6, I have Indiana. I believe in Kurt Zignetti. I just want to see it from the team this year. And this is just a starting point. They could very easily and very quickly move up once they start playing higher teams. And so I believe, I'm not a doubter, this is just where I have them at the beginning. And then number 7, I have Miami. I think that top 7 is that tier 1 kind of team. And now that tier 2, and this is where a lot of the SEC teams make up, is I have Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is the 8th best team going into the season. I have high expectations for them. When you have Trinidad Chambliss, I will obviously have high expectations. I think it could be a really good year for Ole Miss when people might not necessarily be believers. 9 and 10. This is going to get some disagreement for some friends of mine, and I don't know if I believe it, but, maybe this is just the personal bias in me. At number 9, I have Oklahoma, and number 10, I have Texas A&M. You know who you are. That will be upset with that one, and I love it. At 11, I've got LSU. I think this is a developing team. I think that's kind of what everyone thinks. So if they can make it through the first half of the year unscathed or, one loss, I think this is a team to watch out for. And so if they are going to come together and if this works, I think you will see them a lot higher at the end of the year than they are right now. 12, Texas Tech. Though it's not Brendan Sorsby at the quarterback position, the rest of the team is still elite, and Will Hammond showed some flashes last year that he could seriously build off of. 13, Alabama just named their starting quarterback, and this is an interesting team. I'm higher on them now with them naming Russell as their quarterback because the conversation around them, if Mac was their quarterback, was kind of he was going to start it, but then as the season goes on, Keelan Russell was going to take up. That does not sound good. That doesn't sound like there's confidence from the beginning. There's an expectation of a downward trend. I think with Russell being named the starter, it's this is our guy. There still could be some ups and downs, but we trust in this guy to win now. And so I like it more with Russell being named the quarterback. And so I've got him slotted at 13. 14, BYU. I think this is a solid team. I think they can compete with Texas Tech. I'm excited to watch them play. 15, USC. 16, Washington. 17, Penn State. 18, Michigan. 4 straight Big Ten teams. Your Tier 2. How can they compete with Tier 1? Can any one of them rise above and make the playoff? I think that's going to be fascinating to watch. 19, SMU. 20, Houston. 21, Utah. 22, Missouri. 23, Louisville. Tennessee. 24, and Iowa. 25. I think there's going to be disagreement at the bottom. What have they done? And I would ask that really about any of the teams. If you look at any of the teams receiving votes or any of the other polls, really 23 through the rest, I think there's some doubts and there's some questions. I think with these have the least amount of questions or maybe just blind belief from me. But really SMU through Missouri, I trust. SMU, Houston, Utah, and Missouri. I think those are going to be solid teams. I don't know what their ceiling is, but again, solid teams. Louisville, if it comes together, they could be a good team at 23. 24, Tennessee. I trust Heupel. I think he's a solid coach, and I think they could take a next step from last year when they had to scramble at the quarterback position. They might have what they want at the beginning of the year, and I think they'll be a tough team. And then Iowa, pretty safe bet, just to put them at 25 to start the year. See what happens. That's around, like they might climb a few spots. So I think that's a pretty safe bet. And so that concludes our show. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, please like, subscribe, and comment. What do you guys think? You can find this podcast on YouTube and on Spotify. I've got clips on Instagram. Follow at Reaching for the Pylon. Thank you so much for watching. See you Thursday where we break down Week 0 games. God bless.